Hello, crafty friends. It's Jessica here, and welcome back to Jessie Kate Creates. In today's video, we have a tutorial which I'm very excited about because I feel like a lot of the videos on my channel lately have been project shares or craft with me videos, and it's been a minute since we've done a proper tutorial. So the goal is for this video to be 20 to 30 minutes long. At most, hopefully, future Jessica does a good job of editing this all down. But before we get into the tutorial, I need to give you all a disclaimer. This is a card for the grown folks. It does contain the cursey words, so if you are not a fan of curse words or offensive language, this card might not be for you. I don't know that the language is offensive, but it does feature a curse word very bold on the front of the card. So if that is not your vibe, skip this video. You can check out one of the other tutorials on my channel. Maybe I'll link one or two up here, or just hang tight for the next video I make. But this one does contain strong language, so if that's not your vibe, I totally get it. That being said, I personally think this card is hilarious, and I have sold this card many a time at craft shows. It's one of my best sellers, and I think it's just because other adults find it really funny too. Especially if you're not really into the like sweet sentimental cards and you kind of like things that are a little bit spicy or snarky, this one tends to be popular, and it's just funny, and who doesn't love a funny card? So with all of that being said, let's flip this camera around and get into making the card. So to start things out, I have a piece of 12 by 12 pattern paper from Recollections. This is called the Watercolor Balloon Cardstock, although this is very thin, y'all. This probably feels more like printer paper than cardstock. And in the past, when I have made this card, I had a paper pad in my stash that had party hats all over it, and that's what I used. But I've ran out of that paper, so I went shopping, and I was just looking for something that had birthday party vibes, and I thought this fit the bill. Now, my only concern with this piece of paper is that sometimes with 12 by 12 cardstock, the pattern is bigger and it doesn't read as well on an A2 sized card. So here I'm just kind of imagining how my card is going to look with the background, and I think this pattern works, but I want to add a little bit of extra interest. And one of my favorite ways to do that with 12 by 12 paper is to add a little bit of splatter. So that's what I'm doing here. I have some metallic gold acrylic paint and also just a little recycled dropper bottle that is filled with plain, clean water. I have an acrylic block and just a cheapy paintbrush for splattering. All I'm going to do is mix up my acrylic paint with enough water to get the paint loose and moving so that it will be easy for me to splatter. I'm doing this outside because on this day it was windy, but overall relatively nice, and just the size of this paper, it was easier to do this outside on top of some paper bags than to try to find a space to do it in my craft room. So I'm just splattering this paint all over the pattern paper. You can do as much or as little splatter as you want. I love a lot of splatter. So you can see I put a whole bunch on here, and then I set this aside to dry probably for like 30 minutes. Once it was dried, this is what it was looking like. The camera doesn't do a great job of picking up that metallic splatter, but it's very beautiful in person. So the next step is to cut this down. So I pulled out my big paper trimmer for this. I use this because it's just what I have on hand. I had this before I got into paper crafting in my office, and now I use it for my paper crafting. I am going to be making some A2 sized cards, so I'm going to cut this paper down into 2 strips that are 5 1/4 inches tall. Now, on camera, you're only going to see me make one card, but in reality, when I was doing all of this, I was batching each step so that I could make 6 cards from this one piece of pattern paper. Like I said at the beginning of this video, this card is a best seller for me, so I like to keep it on hand, especially since I have 3 or 4 markets coming up over the next month or two. Definitely don't want to run out of this card. Now I'm going to take these strips and cut them down to 4 inches wide. I switched trimmers here just because this tiny trimmer, it's easier for me to use, and I feel like I get a little bit more accurate of a cut with it. That's just what works for me, but of course do whatever works best for you. And with that extra piece of pattern paper to the side, I will eventually cut it down to strips that are 4 inches wide by 1/2 inch tall and use those to decorate inside of the card. Now with the pattern paper cut down, it's time to add these to the card bases. And I'm really sorry, you guys, because my phone cut out when I did this and I didn't realize it until after I'd added all of the backgrounds to the card bases. For my card bases, I am using some blue Recollections 100-pound cardstock that was cut down to 8.5 by 5.5 and scored in the middle at 4.25. Now, since this pattern paper was very thin, I did back it on some white 60-pound cardstock before adding it to my card base. Now, with the card bases done, it is time to move on to making the elements for this card. The first thing I'm going to make is a fun little party hat. For that, I am using this Concord and 9th fashion wear stamp set and the coordinating die set. This is retired, so I'm sorry, I don't think you can pick it up anywhere, but you could use any party hat in your stash, or you could use balloons, or I don't know, whatever birthday adjacent icon you wanted to use. So I pulled out my Misty and a scrap piece of 100-pound cardstock, and I'm going to position my party hat. Now, I am going to color the party hat with alcohol markers, and I'm also going to heat emboss it. But I don't want to heat emboss first and then color, because the embossing powder can mess up the tip of your Copic markers, and I don't want to do that. So instead, as you see here, I'm going to stamp this down with a regular dye ink. I'm just using a dark gray here. You could use whatever you want to use. Then I'm going to color it with the alcohol markers, and then I'm going to stamp it and heat emboss it. And that is some extra work, but it's going to protect my Copic markers, which were an investment, and I don't want to risk messing them up. Now, it's important that I keep that stamp in my Misty and I don't move it until after I do my heat embossing, so I can ensure that my stamp is going to stamp in the exact same place correctly each time. Now, to color these, I decided to go for some blues, and I am using B21, B24, and B29. You could use whatever color combination you prefer. I just like this one for these party hats. So I started with the lightest color, the B21, and I went all around the edges. Next, I am moving to my medium color, B24, and you'll see here I'm being careful to go around those polka dots instead of color them in. And finally, I'm going to go to my darkest color, which is B29, and I'm just using the very tip of the marker to darken up the edges. Again, going around those polka dots, not coloring them in. And then I'm going to go back to the medium color and then the lightest color. When I do my Copic coloring, that's usually what I do. I'll start light, medium, dark, and then go back to the medium and the light. And I find that works well for me, but you can use whatever coloring technique you prefer. Off camera, I am going to go ahead and do the second hat as well. Remember, I'm batching out 6 of these. I'm just showing one on camera. So now I'm going to set this aside so that the alcohol ink can dry, and while that's drying, I'm going to work on stamping out the sentiment for this card. For this, I am using the Sassy Pants Stamps All the Shits stamp set. It also has a coordinating die set. And I love the sub-sentiments in this set. They have things like, congrats, you did it. This is a confetti moment. I'm going to use the one that says, you're old. I just think the stamp set is a hoot. It's so much fun. As you saw, the party hat is still in there. Haven't touched it, not moving it. I grabbed another piece of 100-pound scratch paper, and now I'm positioning the sentiment. I just needed to make sure there was enough space between them that I'd be able to die cut them out. And luckily this scrap was just big enough for that. So I'm going to pick up the stamps, and before I stamp anything down, I'm going to treat my paper with some baby powder. You could also use an anti-static tool, but if you've been watching me for a minute, you know just plain old baby powder and a big fluffy brush is what works for me. Next, I'm going to ink up my stamp with this Versamark sticky ink. You can see my pad is very old and dirty and loved. I also have a second pad that I keep clean so that when I'm doing clear heat embossing, I don't have to worry about like dirty ink showing through. But for something like this, I'm going to be covering it with gold embossing powder. It doesn't matter if the ink is dirty. And actually, sometimes using this dirty ink pad kind of works out to my advantage here, because as I'm stamping this down, because the ink is dirty, it's kind of like a light gray color, so it's easier for me to see whether or not I've gotten a good impression on my paper, because clear ink on white paper can be really hard to see sometimes, but like a dirty gray ink on white paper is a lot easier for me to see, and you're going to see that right here. It's super easy for me to see that I got a good impression. Also, I usually like to stamp things out 2 or 3 times when I'm heat embossing, just to, ensure that that powder has sticky ink to stick to. So now I'm going to cover the sentiment with some gold embossing powder from Hero Arts and just tap off the excess, making sure that everything is coated really well. Now off camera, this whole time since I started stamping out the sentiment, I've had my heat gun going, so it's good and hot now. But before I heat emboss it, I'm just going to take a paintbrush to wipe away any stray powders that are on the paper where I don't want them to be, so I will have a nice clean result. To heat this up, I'm going to start from the back side of the paper and just keep my heat gun moving while the back heats up, and then I'm going to switch around to the front, and you can kind of see there that powder just melts as the heat hits it, but I'm trying not to keep anything in one place too long and just slowly keep moving my heat gun. And when it's done, we have this beautiful glossy gold embossed sentiment. So now it's time to go back to those party hats. By now, I'm pretty sure the alcohol ink has dried, but just to test it, I'm going to sprinkle that powder over the top of the image and see if anything sticks. And as you can see here, everything slid off, so it's dry and ready for me to emboss. So I'm going to do this the exact same way I did the sentiment. I will treat the surface with baby powder, stamp it down 2 or 3 times with sticky ink, and then cover it in embossing powder and heat it up. But while you watch me do that, I thought this would be a good opportunity for us to have a little chat. As you guys know, I make my cards and I sell them at craft shows and on my website. And if you ever are watching one of my cards and you're like, oh my gosh, I need to make that card, and on the off chance you have all the same supplies as me and you go recreate that card, that is awesome. I would just ask that if it is an exact recreation, you don't sell it since it was my design. Now, if you remake the card, but you put your own spin on it, so it's inspired by, but a different card, that is totally cool. And if you want to sell it, that's cool too. So I think a really great example of this is Paper Squirrel Card Designs. I know you follow me on YouTube and here on Instagram, so hey girl, hey. But recently she made a card that was inspired by a card I had previously made, and she tagged me on Instagram. And first of all, thank you for doing that, guys, because it's so awesome to see the things that you create. But also, it was easy to see how her card was inspired by mine, but it was her own take on that card. It was her own like creative twists that she had put on that card. So if we were at a craft fair together selling cards, I wouldn't feel like, man, she just stole my card and is selling my card. Like, no, she took an idea and changed it and made it her own, and that is awesome. So I just wanted to put that out there. I've not run into that. I'm not saying that at all. I've not seen anyone exactly recreate one of my cards and then sell it. So I haven't seen that happen, but I figured I might as well put that out there because it is something that makes me nervous sometimes and makes me wonder like, oh, this card is a bestseller. Like, should I show people on the internet how I made it? But I'm really trying lately to, I don't want to gatekeep things, you know? I want to share the knowledge I have with all of you. Okay, so what is happening here? I just wanted to show you guys, sometimes it might look like my workspace is very clean, but that's just because I push everything out of frame, and I brought all that stuff back in just to show that like during the creative process, I will often take little mini cleaning breaks to put things away, especially since, like I've said before, I batch my cards and I don't do everything all at once. Like I think after I cleaned all of this up, I went and took a break for an hour and then came back and did the other steps, but it's easier for me to get back into the flow when my workspace is clean when I come back. So there's just a little tip for you. All right, so now I'm moving on to die cutting everything. So I've just grabbed the coordinating die for the party hats and the coordinating dies for our sentiment. I'm gonna go ahead, line everything up and cut it out. Now, one of the things that I really enjoy about this die set for the all the shits set is that the dies cut so close to the stamp, you don't get a big white outline, which I personally really like. However, it does mean that it can be a little bit trickier to line up those dies. So what I find easiest is for me to get my face all up in there when I am lining up those dies, just so I can make sure they're going to cut out properly. Because there is nothing quite as devastating as spending a whole bunch of time heat embossing or coloring in an image and then die cutting it and realizing you didn't line your die up and it cut it out wonky and it doesn't look straight, or it missed the corner, or it cut into the image. I've had that happen before, and it's just not fun. So it's better to take a few extra seconds to get your dies lined up properly before you cut them out. For all of my die cutting, I just use my little Cuttle Bug that I got like 7 years ago at this point, I think, maybe longer. And I just run it through the machine and it cuts everything out. And you can see here, once everything is cut out, it all has a nice even border, everything cut just fine because I took that extra time to get it all lined up before I die cut it out. Now, while these dies are still out, I like to stack my die cuts to add a little bit of extra dimension to my cards. So I'm going to take those dies and cut them out of just plain white 100-pound cardstock. Again, I'm just using some scraps here. And I'm going to do this 2 times so that my die cuts will be 3 layers of cardstock thick. Now, while I still have my die cutting machine out, I am going to do one more little bit of die cutting for the landing spot for the sentiment. For that, I'm using the Hero Arts Nesting Circle Infinity dies, and I just picked a circle that was big enough to fit my sentiment. And since the sentiment is gold, of course I'm cutting this circle out of vellum, because y'all know I love the little gold and vellum combo. It just does something so delicious in my brain. So I'm going to go ahead and run that through and cut that out as well. And then that is going to complete all the die cutting I need to do for this card. If you don't love vellum the same way I do, no worries. You could use white cardstock, you could use a colorful cardstock, you could even use a coordinating pattern paper. But with those elements done, now I'm going to work on the element for inside the card. I like to put liners in all of my cards. I use 60-pound cardstock that's 4 by 5 1/4, and I have a bunch of it cut down so that it's ready to go. So the front of the card says, well shit, and the inside says, you're old, happy birthday. Now for this sentiment, I'm combining 2 different stamp sets. So I'm using the Sassy Pants Stamps, Your Old Sentiment, and this happy birthday is from Close to My Heart, just a number stamp set. It is retired, unfortunately. Since these are by different companies, the stamps are different heights. So this year old was a little bit taller. So I had to stamp it first and then take it off the platform and stamp down the happy birthday. Sometimes when you mix stamp sets, you'll notice that you can't stamp them both at the same time, and that's perfectly fine. Just takes a little bit longer, but it looks the same in the end. I did stamp these down with VersaFine Onyx Black ink, and now I'm going to set this off to the side. And the last element I need to make is my coordinating envelope. So I pulled out a red envelope from clearbags.com. I will have it linked below along with everything else I've used in this video. And whenever I use a stamp set, I usually will just use, whatever image I used on the front of the card on the envelope to make them coordinate. So I just grabbed out that party hat and I'm stamping it in some red ink from Concord and Ninth. And usually I will either stamp the bottom of the envelope or the flap on the back. Once I stamped these down, I realized the colors were a little too close and it was kind of hard to see the party hats in person. So I swapped to a darker ink. This is Cranberry by Concord and Ninth. And I'm freehanding this. So I was a little bit nervous here, said a little prayer to the crafty gods that these stamps, I'd be able to line them up. And I lucked out and they lined up almost exactly. And I'm not going to lie, y'all. When I pull up this ink block and I see that I stamped it in almost the exact same spot, I felt like a rock star for a minute. Like, oh my gosh, did anybody just see that? Do you guys ever experience that where it's like something small like lining up a stamp, but it just makes you feel so amazing and euphoric? Anyway, got those stamped down. So now I'm going back to my sentiment and I need to actually stack up all of these dies now. So this is sped up. I don't actually work that fast, but I'm just stacking all the little bits and pieces together. Now remember, for each of these elements, I have 2 layers of white cardstock and then the heat embossed topper. Now I have to be careful here when I am doing the party hat. The way I have designed this card, the party hat sits on top of the word well. So where the party hat overlaps the word, I don't want extra cardstock there because it's going to create a weird hump that's going to make it so that the party hat can't lie flush on the card. So instead, I'm measuring out about where I think those two elements are going to overlap, snipping off the bottom of the party hat, and then I'm just going to take that top piece of the plain white cardstock and adhere that behind the party hat. And that's going to ensure that these two elements lay even and flush on the card. You don't have to do this, but I think it's just one of those small detailed extra steps that can really just make a card look even that much better. Now that I have those done, I'm going to go ahead and glue everything down. Initially, I was planning to use dry adhesive because sometimes wet glue can warp cardstock, but by the time I realized that, I'd already put the glue down, so I was like, meh, it's fine. So, you know, sometimes I'm like super, you know, worried about the small details, and other times I'm like, meh, it's okay. Like, it's a card. The world's not going to end. But anyway, so I get both of those pieces down onto my vellum circle, and then I'm going to flip this over and put a little bit of foam tape behind it. I am using this scrapbook.com thin foam tape. It's only 1 millimeter thick, and I am loving this for adding subtle dimension to my cards. So I'm just going to put a little bit of this foam tape behind my words. Now I could have just used, you know, one strip behind each word, but I was feeling extra on this day, I guess, because I cut down a bunch of small pieces of foam tape, and honestly, I probably really didn't need to, but it is what it is. So I have foam tape now on my words and also on the back of the party hat. Again, here, I'm only putting the foam tape on the top half of the party hat so that the bottom half will lie nice and even with the word well. Okay. So now I have all of my elements made, and the last thing for us to do is assemble this card. Once again, my phone cut out when I was assembling the card, and I didn't realize until I was done, but because I was batching this card off screen, I had all of the other elements done and ready to go. So that's why you see one card already done here. So I don't think I caught this on camera, but I did cut down my extra pattern paper into just a little strip that is about 1/2 inch tall by 4 inches wide. And I'm just adhering that to the bottom of the inside panel for my card, and then I'm going to glue that down to the inside. I love doing this when I'm using pattern paper. It's just such a simple way to make the inside of a card coordinate with the front of the card, which I think just makes the card a little bit more special. Another thing you could do here is take that party hat we used on the front of the card and stamp that in the corner. Either one would work great if you wanted a coordinating inside to your card. Now for the front of the card, I'm just going to take our circle with our sentiment on it and get that positioned how I want it. I want it in the kind of bottom third left of the card, but you could really put this wherever you want on your card. This is just how I like to do it. I like for the sentiment to be kind of wonky because it's a funny, silly sentiment. So I think it being kind of at a wonky angle just adds to the silly whimsy of this card. Then I'm going to take the party hat, remove the foam from the back, and add a little bit of glue to the bottom just so it will stick on top of the word well. And I really love this card so much. I think it's fun, it's silly, it's a little bit something different. And lately I've just really been enjoying making some of my cards be a little bit more adult, a little bit more for the grown folks. I think there's nothing wrong with all the cutesy critter cards and all that. I love those too. But I'm just really loving these adult themed cards as well. And I'd be curious to know, do you guys like cursing on your cards? Do you like having some snarkier cards in your stash? Let me know in the comments down below the video. Here you see I'm just trimming off the vellum that was hanging off of the card, and that finishes up these cards. I love how these cards turned out. Sorry, I know it's a little overexposed there, but the final card reads, well, shit, you're old. Happy birthday. I just love that so much. I love how these turned out. And I also wanted to show you guys really quick. It would be really easy to customize these cards if you wanted and make it someone's favorite color. Here you see I did one envelope blue, I did one envelope red. I couldn't decide whether I liked it more for them to be contrasting or for them to be like matchy-matchy. But you could do this so that the party hat, the card base, and the envelope were all the same color. So I've done this with a red theme before. I had a leftover party hat, so I figured I'd show you. You could make it purple or green or whatever someone's favorite color is. So those are the cards. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope something in this video inspires you or you got some sort of useful tip. If you liked the video, please, please, please like it and give it a thumbs up. That helps me so much with the algorithm. It helps other people find me and join our crafty community. And if you want to see all the videos I put out, ring the notification bell, subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in another video soon. Bye!